Billionaire Mark Cuban pushes back against Elon Musk again. This time, it's over DEI. Okay, so let's see what's happened here. And here we go. The latest to weigh in on the debate is Shark Tank host Mark Cuban, who defended DEI initiatives in the corporate world. In a post on X on Wednesday, Cuban was also responding to comments made by Elon Musk, whom he previously publicly criticized, who equated DEI with racism in a post on X earlier that day. In Cuban's view, DEI helps companies find talent they wouldn't discover otherwise. Without it, people of various races, ethnicities, and orientations will be regularly excluded from hiring consideration, according to Cuban. Good businesses look where others don't to find the employees that will put your business in the best possible position to succeed. So companies that forego DEI practices only stand to lose. The loss of DEI-phobic companies is my gain, Cuban wrote. Musk had earlier written on X that DEI is just another word for racism. Shame on anyone else who uses it. By the way, go to Twitter, and if you can put this exchange, Rob, I don't know if you have it. Is that the one? Okay. Let me help you out, give you my, okay, first of all, discrimination on the basis of race, which DEI does, is literally the definition of racism. So show more. So, and by the way, on the bottom, yeah, show more right there. Okay, let's read what Mark Cuban writes. He says, let me help you out and give you my thoughts on DEI. Help you out. Like Elon needs help, but let's help him out. Diversity. Good businesses look where others don't to find the employees that will put your business in the best possible position to succeed. You may not agree, but I take it as a given that there are people of various races, ethnicities, orientation, etc., that are regularly excluded from hiring consideration. By extending our hiring search to include them, we can find people that are more qualified. The loss of DEI-phobic companies is my gain. 1A, we live in a country with very diverse demographic. In this era where trust of business can be hard to come by, people tend to connect more easily to people who are like them. Having a workforce that is diverse and representative of your stakeholders is good for business. Now go all the way to the bottom and see what Elon retweets back. Go a little bit more. Okay, right there. Now, okay, let's continue with equity, and then Elon responds back. Treating people equally does not mean treating them the same. I made the mistake for a lot of years thinking it did. Equity is a core principle of business. Put your employees in a position to succeed. Recognize their differences, but that's not what equity they're talking about, Mark. This is a different equity you're talking about. Go to the next one, number 3. Inclusion. One of my favorite sayings is great employees reduce the stress of those around them. Great companies create environments that reduce unnecessary stress of their employees. I'm not talking hit a quota or getting the product out the door stress, which in turn increases productivity. This is what inclusion is all about, making all employees, no matter who they are or how they see themselves, feel comfortable in their environment and able to do their jobs. Again, it's not easy. Go a little lower. He continues here, one of the lessons, CEOs don't know someone comes to healthcare in their minds. Okay, so what's the conclusion? If you don't think there's a need for DEI and doesn't create a competitive advantage for your company, just look at X posts, replies, quotas below. These are the same people that work for you or your coworkers. Everyone is entitled to their own POV, but these are same feelings even if they are not said out loud or heard out loud. Ashley St. Clair responds and says, DEI is seen as a core competency in most companies. It's just a huge expense. Yes, and at any time you make something like DEI a requirement, it will turn into checklist and eventually lucrative industry. You give a pretty liberal breakdown of DEI from a definition standpoint, but seem to gloss over what DEI and sister programs such as affirmative action has become in actuality, which is ironically rather discriminatory. Equity and equality are also wrongly conflated here. The reality of DEI is destroying meritocracy to hire based on race and gender for extra social credit points. This is wrong and will only breed further division in the country. Rob, go back to the one that Elon just responds back quickly. Go back right there. I think it's the first one. Go one more right there. Go a little lower. No, you got to go back one more. You had it earlier. Cools. So when should we expect to see a short, white, Asian woman on the Mavs?
That is so funny.
Tom, you hear this? What do you think about this DEI explanation from Mark Cuban?
I think Mark Cuban is trying to play to the choir, and he is trying to kind of keep one foot not getting yelled at on DEI and the other foot, oh, I'm an independent entrepreneur. And I think Cuban is also making a bedrock of his argument there is that people of color or other people aren't going to be considered because of their race. So what he's saying is, companies are racist and they're not even looking at these people anyway. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. Companies are taking great strides to find the absolute best people. It's one of the interesting things that I read about in terms of HR is the whole take the name off, take the name and the zip code and the city off of your resumes, and don't name, so you don't know if it's male or female, or you're interpreting it's male and female by the name at the top. Chris could be Chris, Terry. So you take that off the top and you just look, where's this person been? What have they done? That's interesting. Let's interview them. That's interesting. Let's talk to their references and let's do it on merit. Hiring, there's a lot of effort being done out there to hire in a fair way because companies want great people. Look at the situations we've had here. We're trying to find great people in key places. We don't care what you look like. We want to find great people. And Cubans out there saying, well, DEI is my gain. Your loss is my gain. What are you talking about? If I've got better people than you do, I don't care what they look like, I'm going to beat you, Mark. Mm-hmm. And his premise is, these people wouldn't be found anyway because of the way they look. That's playing to the inflammatory mob of all hiring is racist. And so I think Mark's trying to keep one foot on both sides of it.
He's always like that. It's very interesting when because Mark plays politics, slippery slope,
Completely.
like trying to be an independent, but he's a full-blown liberal. He's
100%.
But at the same time, economically, he knows this shit doesn't work.
100%. Well, why is he spewing it? Why is he talking about it?
So Cat Williams said something very interesting on his podcast with Shay with Shannon Sharp, and he says, a lot of these guys in the community, they will tell you, we back each other up. When you're in Hollywood, you do this and you do that and you do this. When you're in that community, everybody in that community is defending each other, whether the idea is shitty or not. Just defend it. Just back it up. They're not going to be not defending one another. It just seems like that's what he's doing. Whether it is his intention or not, whether it's, what he believes in or not, it's the position he keeps taking. Let me tell you why DEI. Let me tell you why ESG. We have to stop doing this and we have to stop doing that. No. DEI failed. ESG failed. Mm-hmm. These ideas failed, period. And just give it to him. Give it to him and say it was a bad idea is what it was.
Let me break this down. I love what he said about, all right, so instead of getting the best player for your basketball team, just hire a short Asian woman to play for your team. Let's break this down and just simplify this message. Arguably the best player in the basketball right now is Luka Doncic, okay? Other than Nikola Jokic, MVP, Joel Embiid, you might say Giannis, whatever it is. Just to understand DEI, you don't sign Luka, okay, MVP candidate, averages 30 a game, 10 assists, because to fulfill your DEI quota, you go, we can't have Luka, we got to have Sung Soo over here, who's 5'4" Asian woman, because that fills our quota. No, you're trying to win basketball games. That's the goal of an NBA owner. That's the goal of a GM. That's the goal of a head coach. Win games, win championships, not check off boxes. So is the 5'4" Asian woman that Elon alludes to help them win championships? Of course not. So to be clear, DEI in its most simplistic forms is reverse racism. It is anti-straight white men. It is the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And that's what they're looking to do here. So at the end of the day, you know what happened in the S&P, there's the S&P 500 everybody talks about, but there's actually the S&P 100. Here's a little food for thought. What percentage of America is white?
America?
30%? 60%, Vinny. 60%.
I was just trying to be,
My black friends, 14%. Asians that they're looking to hire for the Mavs, 5%. My Hispanic Latino friends, 19-20%. S&P 100. Do you want to know how they've infused their way, DEI, into the S&P 100 top 100 companies? You know what percentage of white people the top S&P has hired this past year, 2021, 2022, as far as it goes back? 6%. 6%. So just let that sink in for a second. 60% of America is white. The S&P 100, the top companies in the country, in the world, only hired 6% of its workers, white people. So that just shows they're not solving for a meritocracy. They're not solving who's the best in the business. They're just doing the DEI checking the box. Look at Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard. That's a prime example. By the way, 23% of who they hired was black.
Many of those companies
22%,
and they're scared.
100%. 22% were Asian, 40% Hispanic. So we're looking for the best people for the job. We all saw what United Airlines tried to do. They said, moving forward, 50% of who we're hiring is going to be women, 50% will be men. Yeah, we got a problem here, buddy. 90% of pilots are men. So now you're putting people's lives in jeopardy just to check off a female box.
Yeah, the hell with
Do you think I give a shit?
It could become
if it's
dangerous.
men, woman, tranny, whatever.
Yeah.
Get me on my flight safe to where I'm going.
Yeah.
Period. I want to win a championship. I want my company to make money. I want to arrive in my city safe. Don't care who it is. Best person for the job.
I just don't have any respect. Like when it comes like a Mark Cuban, like you said, they're flip flop, they're lukewarm, their foot is here. Like it's like I don't have any respect for someone that doesn't take their stance and stick with it. He's obviously suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, which is one of them. But I don't like this flip floppy making everybody happy. He's a man. Stand your ground and say what you really want.
By the way, let me just send you this article here, Rob. Can you please pull up this article and show it to the world? Do you know the man who is screaming DEI, DEI, DEI? DEI.
Oh.
Let's do DEI.
Is it?
Do you know, according to Guardian, please pull this up and show it to the world. Do you know what team is the whitest team in the NBA?
The whitest.
The
Can
Dallas
you pull up
Mavericks.
the whitest team in the NBA according to the Guardian?
The Dallas
What the hell are you talking about, DEI?
Yeah.
The argument is over. You have the whitest team in the NBA.
Yep.
The Dallas Mavericks are consistently white in a black game.
But that's also a reason they haven't won a championship since Dirk Nowitzki in 2001.
But by the way, here's what I will.
The
Here's what's-
champion has an asterisk. Dirk was white.
Here's what I will tell you. Guess what? The Mavs. He puts the right team. He's got a good team.
Yeah.
I actually like what he's doing with the team. My argument isn't his team. I do agree Luka's a top 3 guy in the NBA. He's eventually going to be the best guy in the NBA. I think Giannis is right now number 1. Because Giannis is 1 and he hasn't proven himself yet. So this guy's a top 3
I got
guy
the
in the
Joker,
NBA.
but that's another point.
But yeah, Joker's also top 3 in my eyes. I just put, if I have a choice between Giannis and a Joker, I'm taking Giannis. But Mark, you realize how much your argument loses credibility when your team is the whitest team. So let's go read it on the bottom. Let's go read it on the bottom here. So what the stat says. So the NBA was 74.2% black, 16.9% white. It was very, NBA runs on Mavs. Okay, they often kept the dreams of mediocre white guys alive. Yet one franchise has kept the dream of mediocre white guys.
This is just the pot calling the kettle black.
In 15 of the last 21 Mavs seasons, there were 3 or more white players on the 12-man active roster. In more than half of those 15 seasons, there were at least 4 white players, not to mention at least 2 starting white players. The Mavericks, in the literal sense, do not like these like the rest of the league. It's tempting to put this down to racism or at least unconscious bias on the part of the Mavericks owner. Oh, shit, Mark. Cuban. But if anything, the opposite is true. Although the Mavericks have a toxic workplace, although the Mavericks have a dubious history of toxic workplace culture when it comes onto female employees, Cuban has thrown his support to Black Lives Matter and da-da-da-da.
By the way, don't just skip over that last point.
The women thing.
Yes, they had major issues internally with the women and sexual allegations going on there for years, systemically within the Mavs.
But that goes to your point, though. He's full of shit. He's flip-flop.
Correct.
By the way, I have a friend, Pat. You guys will respect this. He's a comedian. Rob, his name is Adam Hunter. You don't have to look it up. He said, I think in basketball, there shouldn't be any overtime at all. When the regular time is done, whichever team has the most white people, they win.
There you go.
Why even have overtime?
Let's not gloss over this. Do you remember the incredible storm and Mark Cuban should be thanking his personal God that there was Dan Snyder in Washington at the Redskins, now the Commanders, because that was a horrible toxic culture for women who he had the special calendar made, with their own cheerleaders, and it was really inappropriate and all the stuff that went on there. At that same time, that created the cloud in front of the fact that the NBA was going through the same thing with the Dallas Mavericks and women. What was going on. And so Mark should thank Dan Snyder for making a bigger problem for women that he hid behind while it was being fixed in Dallas.
But you know what this does, though? You know what this does? Here's what happens when you have a story like this, when you're going out there and criticizing, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, yeah, but Yeah, but you know what happens if Elon Musk finds out? Okay, go tag, by the way, if you're watching this podcast, do a short clip of this, put it on Twitter, tag Elon Musk, and say, Elon, did you know that Dallas Mavericks are the whitest team in the NBA? Do you know what Elon would do with a troll job of this?
Yeah.
Anyways,
Just keep in mind one thing about the Mavericks, or Mark Cuban, and you'll appreciate this. We always talk about establishment, anti-establishment, disruptor. There was no bigger disruptor in the NBA than Mark Cuban when he entered the league.
Yeah.
No bigger disruptor.
Fighting, yelling.
This guy got fined every single game.
Yelling, cussing.
He's yelling at refs.
upwards of $500,000 at
This
a
guy
time.
was a disruptor. But here's what happens. Eventually, you bend. Eventually, you end up on Shark Tank. Eventually, you get owned by NBC.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're part of CNBC. Eventually, China. Eventually, the disruptor becomes part of the establishment. Now he's establishment.
100%.
And he's basically calling out the disruptors like the Elon Musk.
Well, guess what? This article of Guardian is officially live. So good luck. Go try to hide this Guardian article.
No, you're right.
Whitest
Adam.
team in the NBA.
You're right, Adam. It's barbarians to bureaucrats. At the end of the day, you end up on the back end and you're a bureaucrat.
Bang, bang.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.